don't know if the American people are watching it as closely as the news media is in New York, but it's become quite a show. They have police all over town, and the media is ready for it. And it is a significant event. You've never had a president before who has been charged criminally and indicted, and so we're in new territory.
Yeah. I've kind of reserved comment about this until I see what the charges are under the indictment. I've heard everything from 20 counts to 34 counts. So I'm not sure, since I've gone on air this morning, whether or not they've released any more information about the in a formal way about the indictment. But your thoughts about what the public's reaction has been to this thus far?
Well, first, Newell, I think you have done exactly the right thing. Ever since last week, you have people on television on both sides just yapping and yapping about what this indictment means, and nobody's ever had a chance to look at it. So some judgment needs to be reserved until after we know what's in it. We can guess what's in it, but we don't always know what's in something like that until we see it. So I think you've been very responsible, and I think a lot of people in the media on both sides just talking about this like they assume they know what's going on. And I think that they've misled the American people. But anyway, in terms of public opinion, I think what's interesting is that everybody is focusing on the Republican electorate. And the polls clearly show that in the last week or two, and because you had not only the indictment, but you had Trump the week before say, excuse me, that he expected to be arrested. So it's been going on for a couple of weeks, actually. But Trump has consolidated his support within the Republican Party. The average of the votes that came out that were taken right after the indictment was announced shows Trump leading DeSantis by more than 30 points for the Republican nomination, which is about 3 times the lead that he had a few weeks before. So clearly this has caused a reaction on the part of Republicans in Trump's support. But there are a few points to make here. Number one, all of this we hear about the polls and Trump improving his position, all of that is happening within the Republican Party. Nobody is talking about him improving his position among independent voters and swing voters, and certainly not improving his position among Democrats. So it's all within the Republican Party, and essentially what is people who used to support Donald Trump but who sort of left the fold in recent months have come back. Now, the next part is, have they come back permanently, or have they come back just temporarily because they want to show support for him, because they don't believe this thing has been handled right and are against what the DA in New York is doing. So we don't know whether this is permanent or temporary within the Republican Party, and we haven't had enough clear numbers yet to determine what it's doing with the rest of the electorate. You see, the problem Trump has is electability. If Republican voters don't think he can win the election, if they don't think he can beat Biden, but think that DeSantis could, or some other Republican could, you see, that's what really hurts Trump. And all of this chaos and all of this controversy surrounding Trump usually doesn't help his ability to get swing voters to a general election. So ultimately, the controversy itself may convince Republicans that, we like Trump, we stand and support him, his enemies are our enemies, but we really need somebody to run for president who can win. and that's ultimately his vulnerability. And I don't believe any of that has changed.
Yeah, what's interesting too, and I'm trying to find it in one of your previous Lunchtime Politics publications. I think it talked about how the public viewed both Joe Biden and Donald Trump when it came to honesty.
Right.
And neither one of them polled strong at all. In fact, I was completely shocked by it. Nobody got over 50%, not even close.
Yeah. No, that's right. And we've seen numbers like that for quite a while. But that poll showed that 65% of the American people said they think Trump is not honest. And 54 or 55% said they thought Biden was not honest. So that's a majority of the American people who don't think either one's honest. Now, DeSantis did better. 40% said they thought he was not honest. So that's well under 50. So he was clearly in a stronger position there. But unlike these other two, he hasn't been president. He hasn't been exposed to constant scrutiny the way they have. But that is true. The American people don't think either one are honest. And by the way, when Trump was running against Hillary Clinton, the American people didn't think either one were honest then either. So it's a tough situation when in a country you have most of these national figures, and in this case presidents, where the American people don't think they're honest, and it's very hard to pull a country together and to have the kind of leadership you need when voters just don't feel like anybody has integrity.
What's interesting too, I mean, going back when you dovetailed this and you and I have not had an opportunity to talk about that Wall Street Journal NORC poll about what was important, the values that citizens felt were important to them. That one really kind of rocked my world, because it seemed to me that the basic values that this country has been built on, it's like very few people believe in them anymore.
That's right, and I had a piece in the Times-Picayune yesterday on it, and sort of went through the polls and what it showed, and it was shocking. I have to say that it's not only that people no longer think values like whatever it may be, patriotism or having children or religion or whatever it may be, it's now very low in terms of what people think is important, but how it's changed so radically in the last 25 years, and that these numbers have just plummeted over those, since 1998, and it looks like they keep falling. Some of the numbers took a big hit just in the last 4 or 5 years. So the American people are increasingly unhappy and frustrated, and they just don't trust a lot of things anymore. And because of that, they don't think a lot of things they once thought were very important as important. And this even extended to things like belief in God and belief in the importance of hard work and community involvement and having children and families. All of these things took a nosedive.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to highlight that is, and especially this community involvement number that took a huge nosedive in Democrats, Republicans, and independents. What do these candidates run on now? I mean, when you look at how ho-hum they feel about all of these baseline political issues, for me growing up as a young adult, I mean, I ran 3 elections. I I participated in probably 20 to 30 others, in helping run campaigns. What do you run on? I mean, it's like no one cares about any of these issues.
Well, that's why I think candidates for office need to take their positions in their candidacies more seriously than they had in the past, in terms of telling the voters exactly what they're going to do and what they stand for. And people who are in office need to govern properly. They need to show the American people they can do the job. And when we see all of the fighting and games that are being played in Washington, by both parties in Congress, so much is counterproductive for them. Everybody says, well, they're all playing politics and they're looking for their own interest. And I say, well, it would be nice if they acted in favor of their own interest, because if they did, they'd do a better job, And I think the American people want people who can govern, who can do their jobs. I don't think they're looking for, all of this unnecessary drama and chaos, which I think is really hurt Donald Trump a lot over the years, and it's hurt some Democrats too. But I think that's really what it is, that you need to stand for common sense and doing your job. And there's so many pressures now on candidates. The money pressure is enormous. The pressure of dealing with a constant 24-hour-a-day news cycle puts a lot of pressure on candidates to constantly say things that voters want to hear, as opposed to saying things that voters need to hear. And so all of that, has added up over the years, and so this is what we have now. We have elections where nobody likes the candidates, and nobody trusts the candidates, and people are voting against, not for. And then when people get in office, they don't believe they do a good job. They don't even they're not even giving people an opportunity to do a good job in a lot of instances. So we've got a mess on our hands here, and it's not just national politics. We've seen it locally. We've seen it in state elections here and around the country, and that's where politics is now. And I do think at some point there's going to be a need for some type of citizen-led revolt to kind of put things on the right course. But to do that, you have to have leaders that you can vote for who will do that for you. And I'm not saying none of the people who are thinking about running for president could do it. I think quite a few of them have the ability to do it if they wanted to. But most of the candidates these days think that they have to act in a way that isn't always helpful to not only the system, but to their own political benefit.
Yeah. Ron, when we come back, let's talk about media accountability. I watched a YouTube video yesterday of Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton at Columbia University both complaining about dark money. And I couldn't even believe my lying eyes that these two were complaining about it. We'll be right back. We're visiting with Ron Fauché, political analyst and publisher of Lunchtime Politics. Stay with us, folks. And, folks, special treat tomorrow. We're going to have Coach Kim Mulkey on, the coach of the Fighting Tigers, the Lady Tigers, and the national champs. Really looking forward to that. I love the way that she handles the media. It's so honest, it's ridiculous. Ron, I'm excited about that. I know you're a big LSU fan. I'm sure you watched the game as well.
Yeah, and it's a. I was thinking when you were saying she's going to be on the show, I said, "Well, boy, your ratings are going to go up tomorrow." So that's great. I'm looking forward to hearing the interview.
Yeah, I loved. I forgot what game it was. I'll have to go back and look when they break to the coach And they said, "Well, Coach, what do you think?" She goes, "What, are you kidding me?" She goes, "If I was watching this game, I'd have turned it off." Because we can't shoot a foul shot. We can't shoot from the field. I almost fell out of my chair laughing when she said it. I mean, I loved it.
Yeah.
It was so good. But talking about the media, how much responsibility do they have for this? I was telling you earlier, I watched this video of Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton at some presentation in Colombia talking about dark money and the fact that, so many elections are now influenced by contributors that we don't know who they are. And I was sitting there just kind of mystified by, like, are you really talking about this? It's not like neither one of you have ever have never received dark money. I mean, you don't look it in the face and say no to it, ever.
Well, there have always been a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to political money, and like you say, the Democrats used to throw a fit because the Koch brothers got together and were spending a lot of money on politics around the country, and saying what an evil, horrible thing it was, and were writing books about it, and made it a partisan issue. And then just a year or two later, the Democrats were doing the same thing, and of course, Democrats have been doing a lot of that for years. Labor unions, for example, have been contributing a lot of money through super PACs and independent expenditures over the years, as well as other Democratic groups and interest groups. So yes, both sides are doing it. And for one side to be criticizing the other side and to talk about this being such a bad idea without attempting to do something about it, support policies to do something about it, is really just, I guess you could say it's laughable because it just makes no sense. But there's an awful lot of this going on.
And the media, nobody calls anybody out. I mean,
no,
it's kind of like, and everybody's sitting in the audience, and at Columbia, these are not stupid people, right?
Sure not.
And
Sure not.
they're shaking their head, and it's like, you got to be kidding me. I mean,
there was
especially Hillary. I mean,
yeah, sure, absolutely. And there was a story earlier today about this fellow is a Swiss billionaire, and he is contributing millions and millions of dollars to political causes, and I was thinking to myself, well, that's not legal, and there was a line here from the news story today. They were talking about it. His name is Weiss, and it says, as a foreign national, Weiss is prohibited from donating to candidates or political committees. But his influence is still broadly felt through millions of dollars routed through a network of nonprofit groups that invest heavily in the democratic ecosystem. Democratic meaning Democratic Party ecosystem. Well, I mean, isn't that an illegal third-party subterfuge? Isn't having people gone to jail for that who they can't do something directly, so they have third-party people do it around the law, and they're talking about it like it's a kind of an interesting, skillful thing to play like that, when in fact something like this may be violating the law. So you've got not only you have all of these big so-called dark money groups playing in politics for both sides, but you've got them from other countries now, and the impact of that on the American system, could be significant. And
both parties proactively solicit dark money. I mean, so
absolutely.
for either one of them to point the finger at the other is completely ludicrous. Ron, Trump.
I mean,
I was going to say,
even just soliciting it, they're actively organizing structures to get it in.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that's illegal. In most cases, this is legal. But if they go too far, it may not be.
Well, and if there's no surprise information in this indictment, I bring that up because I think it highlights, the hypocrisy of what we're doing here as to what cases that we're choosing to go after. And just got a note that Donald Trump has just walked into the courthouse there in Manhattan. I wanted to ask you this, and I did speak about this yesterday. Whether or not this judge imposes a gag order in this case, I am adamantly opposed to gag orders. I think it's an infringement on a First Amendment right. If a defendant is in fact innocent till proven guilty, why should they be burdened with a gag order? If they can't talk about their own innocence, who better to talk about their innocence than they are if they're truly presumed innocent? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you make a strong point there. And when you start imposing gag orders on public officials or candidates for public office, then you have another problem. You've got a free speech problem because these people are supposed to be talking to the public and speaking in public. Of course, in discussions I've had with some lawyers about it, that they said, well, the gag order would only apply to the case, and it wouldn't apply to other things that you would talk about in the course of a political campaign. And that may very well be true, but if somebody wants to talk about the case as part of a political issue and turn it into a political issue on either side, the question is, should they have a right to do that? And it seems to me there's a pretty strong First Amendment right to free speach, and I would agree with you about that. The gag orders would seem to be in violation of that, particularly on something like this.
Well, especially when the media gets free rein to engage in conjecture. What you and I coming full circle to what we talked about to start out with.
That's right. Right, and the conjecture and the speculation is the problem. For days now, people in the media have not known anything else, anything new about what was going on here after the indictment was made. There really hasn't been any significant information that's come out since then. But you've had dozens of people constantly on all these cable talk shows and in all of these internet discussions and podcasts that are just constantly speculating about what can happen, what should happen, what's going to happen, guessing about what's going to happen. And instead of just waiting until it happens and then talk about it. One of the things that has got me with a lot of political coverage is, before somebody gives a big speech or before there's a debate, people are on cable TV and the internet and podcasts just talking about what are they going to say? What is it likely they're going to say? How will the audience respond to that? Well, it's sort of like, let's wait until it happens, and then let's talk about it. And the problem is that, and it isn't a problem, for people in talk radio, because you have shows with a limited time period, and you're in and out, and if anything, you're being cut off sometimes from talking about things you'd like to talk about. And people in newspaper and print, they have only so much space, and they write something and you read it, and then it's over with. But when you have 24 hours of coverage to fill, it puts an awful lot of pressure on the media to just keep agitating and talking about things that they have nothing new to talk about, no news to report. And that's not good. That's not good journalism. And I don't think it's particularly helpful for the American people.
Yeah. Views of the Trump airplane landing at LaGuardia didn't seem all that important to me. And helicopter views of his motorcade going through Manhattan didn't seem all that important to me either. We'll be right back, folks.
Well,
We're visiting with Ron Fauché, political analyst and publisher of Lunchtime Politics. Stay with us. Welcome back, folks. We're visiting with Ron Fauché, political analyst and publisher of Lunchtime Politics. I guess, what makes this a historic moment in some sense, Ron, is that this is the first former president that's criminally charged. And if, what a lot of folks are saying is going to be in this allegedly a 34-count indictment about a payoff to a porn star and whether or not this is campaign related, do you get the sense that these types of cases are really going to change in flavor in the future?
Well, it's hard to say.
When you have a seminal case like this, it just they tend to feed on themselves politically, right?
Well, they do. You had something somewhat similar. It wasn't, the facts were different, but when John Edwards, the Democratic, senator who had run for vice president in his presidential campaign, he had solicited money to be paid to his girlfriend, and it solicited it from a campaign contributor and fundraiser. And so the charge there was whether or not he was using that and doing that as a campaign device, and if he was, whether it was violating campaign finance law because it wasn't reported and it exceeded the limits and that sort of thing. And Edwards won the case. He was not found guilty on that. So that was a precedent that tended to pull back from on some of these charges. But your point, I think, is a good one, that when you start making indictments and charging people for things that hadn't been done before, it is going to set some new precedents. Now, that doesn't mean they shouldn't do it. I mean, if somebody is violating the law,
Sure.
then they have a responsibility to do it. And I don't know, we still don't know what these charges are. But I think you do make an important case, because there are a lot of things that involve campaign finance that can technically be construed as violating the law that oftentimes aren't being charged. And I was talking earlier about a foreign national who was routing money into partisan political activities, apparently. And it looks to me like there could be a leak. I don't know if there is or not. I'm no expert on the facts of that case, but it looks like there could be. And nobody is saying that. They're just sort of reporting it like, well, everybody does it. But if somebody did want to make a legal case out of that, then all of a sudden it will expand the scope of this in terms of law enforcement and criminal exposure.
Well, what we'll do is, once this all plays itself out, we'll get you back on so that we don't engage in conjecture, and we can talk about what actually the charges are. I can't wait to see them. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. As always, thank you for your time, your insight. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
All righty, folks, that's Ron Fauché, political analyst and publisher of Lunchtime Politics. You need to check that publication out. It's free. And it's really good, because he's always looking at the averages of all of the polls, and I really appreciate Ron's approach. We'll be right back. Stay with us.